the desperate signal. The Galactic Council chambers had never seen such chaos. Ambassador Zethkri of the Velian Republic clutched his translation device with trembling claws as the emergency session devolved into panicked chittering and fearful whispers. The massive holographic display in the center of the chamber showed a sight that had struck terror into the hearts of every civilized species in the galaxy. The Devourers had returned. "Honored delegates!" Chancellor Mordun's voice boomed through the speakers, though even his usually commanding presence seemed diminished. "The situation is dire. Our long-range sensors have detected a Devourer fleet of unprecedented size moving through the Outer Rim. Conservative estimates put their numbers at over 50,000 vessels." A collective gasp rippled through the assembled representatives. 50,000. The last time the Devourers had attacked, 300 years ago, they had brought merely 10,000 ships and still managed to consume 17 inhabited systems before the combined fleets of 12 species could drive them back. "What of our defenses?" called out Ambassador Thies from the Serpentine Confederacy, her scaled features pale with worry. "Surely our technological advances since the last incursion are insufficient," Morden cut her off grimly. "Our military advisors estimate that even with the combined might of all Council fleets, we have perhaps a 20% chance of victory. The Devourers have evolved their bioships. They're larger, more aggressive, and their adaptive capabilities have improved dramatically." Silence fell over the chamber like a burial shroud. 20%. Those weren't odds any sane being would accept when the stakes were the survival of galactic civilization. "There must be something," whispered Ambassador Cleaton of the crystalline hegemony, his faceted form refracting the chamber's lights into anxious rainbows. "Some weapon we haven't considered, some ally we haven't contacted." That's when Ambassador Zethkri stood up, his forearms trembling slightly. "There is one possibility," he said, his voice barely audible, "though many of you will think me mad for suggesting it." All eyes turned to the Velian diplomat. His species was known for their cautious nature and logical thinking, not for wild suggestions. "The Deathworlders," Zethkri continued, his voice growing stronger. "The humans of Terra." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Angry chittering, outraged hisses, and shocked exclamations filled the chamber. Several delegates began speaking at once, their words overlapping in a cacophony of disbelief. "Absolutely not. Those savages? They're barely civilized. Have you lost your mind?" Chancellor Mordun raised his hands for silence, though it took several minutes for the chamber to calm down. "Ambassador Zethkri," he said carefully, "while we appreciate your creative thinking, I must remind you that humanity has been classified as a Level 9 Deathworld species. They are considered too dangerous for standard diplomatic contact." Zethkri's mandibles clicked nervously, but he pressed on. "With respect, Chancellor, that classification was made based on fear, not fact. Yes, humans come from a world that would kill most of us within minutes. Yes, their biology is terrifyingly efficient at violence. But consider this. When was the last time humans initiated aggression against any council member?" The chamber fell quiet as delegates reluctantly admitted the truth. Humans had been observed for over 2 centuries since their discovery, and while they were undeniably capable of horrific violence, they had never attacked without provocation. If anything, their few interactions with galactic civilization had been surprisingly reasonable. "They helped the Altarian refugees during the Nebula crisis," Zethkri continued. "They shared medical technology with the Healers Guild when the Crimson Plague struck the inner worlds, and when pirates attacked the Gentle Traders convoy near their system, human vessels responded to the distress call and fought off the attackers without asking for payment." Ambassador Thies shifted uncomfortably. "That's true. But their methods were effective," Zethkri interrupted, something his polite species rarely did. The pirates haven't been seen in that sector since. Chancellor honored delegates. I'm not suggesting we invite humans to our tea ceremonies. I'm suggesting we ask the only species in the galaxy that might actually be able to fight the Devourers on equal terms. The massive display shifted, showing tactical projections of human military capabilities based on long-range observations. The numbers were staggering. Human ships might be smaller than council vessels, but they were fast, heavily armed, and seemed to operate under tactical doctrines that prioritized aggression and adaptability over the cautious, defensive strategies preferred by most civilized species. Their technology is primitive, objected General Vashator of the United Tribes. Kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, nuclear missiles, barbaric tools. Barbaric tools that work, Zethkri replied. Our energy shields that render most council weapons useless. Human kinetic rounds punch right through them. Our adaptive armor that learns to counter energy weapons. It can't adapt to a chunk of depleted uranium moving at relativistic speeds. Chancellor Mordun studied the tactical display thoughtfully. The human technological approach was indeed crude by galactic standards, but it was also brutally direct. Where council species had spent millennia refining elegant solutions to complex problems, humans seemed to prefer overwhelming those problems with raw force and stubborn determination. Even if we were to consider this, he said slowly, how would we contact them? Official first contact protocols require years of preparation, cultural studies, linguistic analysis. We don't have years, Zethkri said grimly. We have weeks, maybe a month before the Devourers reach inhabited space. But I believe there's a way. The humans monitor radio transmissions throughout their local space cluster. We could broadcast a simple message on their communication frequencies. And say what exactly? Demanded Ambassador Kree of the Peaceful Alliance. Hello, violent Deathworlders. Please come save us from the galaxy-eating monsters? Zethkri's mandibles clicked in what his species considered a grim smile. Actually, yes, something very much like that. Humans have a cultural concept they call cavalry. When their historical warriors were in trouble, they would send for the cavalry, fast, mobile fighters who could arrive quickly and turn the tide of battle. From what we've observed of human psychology, they respond positively to requests for help, especially when the stakes are high and the odds are against them. The chamber erupted in debate again, but this time there was less outrage and more serious consideration. As the hours passed and various military experts presented increasingly grim projections of their chances against the Devourers, the unthinkable began to seem merely desperate. Finally, as the 7th hour of debate drew to a close, Chancellor Mordun called for order. We will put it to a vote, he announced. All those in favor of attempting contact with the human Deathworlders? The vote was closer than anyone had expected. Fear of the Devourers barely outweighed fear of humanity, but it was enough. By a margin of just 11 votes, the Galactic Council authorized first contact with Earth. 3 days later, a carefully crafted message was broadcast across multiple frequencies toward the Sol system. It was simple, direct, and designed to appeal to human psychology based on years of covert observation. This is the Galactic Council to the people of Earth. We are under attack by an ancient enemy called the Devourers. They consume entire worlds and all life upon them. Our fleets cannot stop them. Billions will die unless someone helps us. We know humans are warriors. We know you understand duty and honor. If you can hear this message, please respond. The galaxy needs its cavalry. The message was transmitted continuously for 6 days. On the 7th day, they received a response. It was audio only, transmitted in heavily accented galactic standard that suggested the humans had been monitoring Council communications for much longer than anyone had realized. Galactic Council, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. We received your message. We're coming. Tell us where to meet you, and we'll bring everything we have. Chen out. In his private chambers that night, Ambassador Zethkree stared out at the stars and wondered if he had just saved galactic civilization or doomed it. The humans were coming. Now they would all discover whether the galaxy's most feared species were saviors or conquerors. Time would tell, but time was one thing they were rapidly running out of. The Devourers were less than 3 weeks away from the first inhabited systems, and the fate of trillions now rested in the hands of a species most of the galaxy considered barely better than the monsters they were supposed to fight. But as Zethkree watched the stars, he felt something he hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. The cavalry was coming, and despite everything, that felt like exactly what they needed. The arrival of the Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the TDS Indomitable, watching the swirling patterns of hyperspace through the main viewport. Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements sharp and precise despite the tension that filled the air. Behind them, stretched across light years of folded space, came the largest fleet Earth had ever assembled. "Translation in 30 seconds, Admiral," reported Navigator Martinez, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "All ships report ready for real space emergence." Chen nodded, her weathered features calm despite the magnitude of what they were about to face. At 53, she had commanded fleets through the Martian colonial wars, the asteroid belt conflicts, and the brief but vicious encounter with the machine intelligences of Proxima Centauri. But this was different. This was first contact with galactic civilization, and potentially the largest military engagement in human history. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Remember, we're not here to conquer or intimidate. We're here to help. But if those Devourer things want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." The hyperspace window collapsed, and suddenly they were in normal space again. What they saw took even the veteran crew's breath away. Spread before them was the largest gathering of ships anyone had ever imagined. Thousands upon thousands of vessels representing dozens of different species floated in loose formation around what appeared to be a massive space station. The ships were unlike anything in human databases. Sleek, organic curves dominated some fleets, while others favored crystalline structures that caught and refracted starlight. Still others appeared to be living creatures, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. "Holy," began someone at one of the stations, then caught themselves. "Sorry, Admiral. It's just, there are so many of them." "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Park. "Multiple sources, actually. They all want to talk." Chen straightened her uniform. "Put me through to whoever's in charge, and make sure our translators are working properly." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a being that was clearly not human. It had 4 arms, a chitinous exoskeleton, and large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to hold a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Admiral Chen," the being said, its voice artificially smoothed by the translation matrix, "I am Ambassador Zethkree of the Valian Republic. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to the Kepler defense line. We weren't entirely certain you would come." Chen smiled, and she was gratified to see that the alien recognized the expression as friendly. Apparently, someone had done their homework. "Ambassador, when someone asks for the cavalry, we show up. It's what we do. Now, where are these Devourers you're so worried about?" Another figure appeared on the screen, this one resembling a cross between a lizard and a tree, with bark-like skin and glowing amber eyes. "I am Chancellor Mordun. The Devourers will arrive in approximately 8 standard days. Our long-range sensors show they have increased their fleet size to nearly 60,000 vessels." 60,000. Chen felt her stomach tighten, but kept her expression neutral. The human fleet numbered just over 2,000 ships, every combat-capable vessel Earth and its colonies could muster. They were outnumbered 30 to 1, and that wasn't counting the Council forces. "What about your ships?" she asked. "How many vessels do you have?" Approximately 12,000 combat vessels representing 18 different species, Mordoun replied. However, our tactical simulations suggest that even combined with your forces, our chances of victory are... He paused, consulting something off-screen. Approximately 37%. Chen nodded slowly. Those were bad odds, but she'd faced worse. We'll need to see your tactical data, fleet compositions, and anything you know about Devourer capabilities. My staff will want to coordinate battle plans. Of course, Zethkri said quickly. We have prepared briefings and... Admiral, interrupted her tactical officer, Commander Torres. You need to see this. Chen turned to look at the secondary display, where Torres was highlighting something in the long-range sensor data. Her blood ran cold as she realized what she was looking at. Those aren't ships, she said quietly. No, ma'am, Torres confirmed. They're creatures, living biological entities the size of dreadnoughts. And according to the sensor data the Council provided, they reproduce by consuming organic matter. The implications hit her immediately. These weren't just invaders. They were a plague, a species that literally ate worlds and converted the biomass into more of themselves. No wonder the aliens were terrified. Over the next several hours, Chen and her staff attended briefings that painted an increasingly grim picture. The Devourers were an ancient species that emerged from deep space every few centuries to feed. They consumed everything organic they encountered, stripping planets bare and using the harvested biomass to grow their fleet. Previous encounters had ended only when they had eaten their fill and retreated back into the void between galaxies. The last time they came, 300 years ago, they consumed 17 inhabited worlds before our combined fleets could drive them off, explained General Vashator of the United Tribes, a being that looked like an ambulatory crystal formation. We lost over 40 billion sentients. Chen studied the tactical displays showing the Devourers' approach. The alien ships, creatures, moved in patterns that suggested a hive mind rather than individual commanders. They showed no fear, no hesitation, no tactical flexibility. They simply consumed everything in their path. What's their weakness? She asked. Everything has a weakness. The alien commanders exchanged glances. That's just it, Zethkri said slowly. We're not certain they have any. Their biohulls are incredibly resilient. They adapt to energy weapons within minutes, and they seem immune to most forms of electronic warfare. What about kinetic weapons? Asked Commander Torres. Another exchange of glances. We don't typically use kinetic weapons, admitted General Vashator. They're considered primitive. Chen smiled grimly. Primitive, maybe, but effective. Show me their hull specifications. The next few hours were spent in intensive tactical planning. The human officers quickly identified several potential vulnerabilities that the Council forces had overlooked. The Devourers' biohulls were incredibly tough and adaptive, but they were still biological. They could be poisoned, diseased, or simply overwhelmed with more damage than their regenerative capabilities could handle. We need to hit them hard and fast, Chen explained to the assembled Council commanders during the joint tactical briefing. Your energy weapons are perfect for shields and armor, but these things don't use shields. They rely on their hulls to absorb damage. Our kinetic weapons can punch through biomatter like it's tissue paper. But there are so many of them, protested Admiral Sath of the Serpentine Confederacy, her scaled features twisted with worry. Even if your weapons are effective, we're still vastly outnumbered. Numbers aren't everything, Chen replied. My people have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. These Devourers may be big, but they're predictable. They just charge straight at their targets and try to overwhelm them. We can use that against them. She activated the tactical display, showing her proposed battle plan. We set up a layered defense. Your long-range energy weapons soften them up as they approach. Our missile cruisers hit them with nuclear warheads at medium range. Let's see how well their bio-hulls handle fusion fire. And when they close to short range, we hit them with everything we have. The alien commanders studied the plan with growing excitement. It was audacious, aggressive, and completely contrary to standard Council defensive doctrine. It was also the first plan any of them had seen that offered a real chance of victory. There's one more thing, Chen added. We're going to need volunteers. This plan requires some of our ships to hold position until the last possible moment. It's dangerous, and not everyone will make it home. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every Council species volunteered ships for the most dangerous assignments. Even the normally peaceful, gentle traders offered to modify their vessels for combat. As the briefing concluded and the various commanders returned to their fleets, Zethkri approached Chen privately. "Admiral," he said quietly, "I must ask, why are you doing this? Your people have no obligation to help us. You don't even know us." Chen looked out at the vast fleet assembled around them. Thousands of ships from dozens of species, all preparing to fight and die to protect worlds they had never seen. "Ambassador," she said simply, "someone asked for help. That's enough." As she spoke, alerts began sounding throughout the fleet. The Devourers had been spotted on long-range sensors. They would arrive in less than 6 days, and when they did, they would face something they had never encountered before. An enemy that refused to run, refused to hide, and was more than willing to fight them on their own terms. The galaxy's cavalry had arrived, and they were ready for war. The battle for the galaxy. The void around the Kepler defense line sparkled with the lights of 14,000 warships as the combined Human Council fleet prepared for the fight of their lives. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical displays that showed the approaching Devourer swarm like a dark stain spreading across the star field. "Contact in 17 minutes, reported Navigator Martinez, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. "All ships report ready for combat." Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the enemy formation. 60,000 bioships approached in a massive sphere, their living hulls pulsing with alien bioluminescence. They showed no formation discipline, no tactical awareness, just the relentless hunger of a species that had consumed worlds for millions of years. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Park, "we're receiving transmission from the Council flagship. Chancellor Morden wishes to speak with you. Put him through." The elderly alien's tree-like features appeared on the screen, his amber eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and fear. "Admiral Chen, our long-range sensors show the Devourers have increased speed. They'll reach our position ahead of schedule." "How much ahead?" Chen asked. 14 minutes. Chen felt her stomach tighten, but her voice remained calm. "Understood, Chancellor. Signal all ships. Advance the timeline by 3 minutes. And, Chancellor, it's been an honor." Mordun's bark-like features shifted into what she had learned was his species' equivalent of a smile. "The honor has been ours, Admiral. May your ancestors guide your aim." The transmission ended, and Chen turned to her crew. These men and women had followed her through hell before, and they were about to do it again. "All right, people. You know the plan. We hold the line no matter what. The entire galaxy is counting on us." "Contact!" shouted the sensor operator. "Devourers emerging from hyperspace. Distance, 50 million kilometers and closing fast." The main display shifted to show the nightmare that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. The Devourer ships were massive organic monstrosities that looked more like deep-sea creatures than spacecraft. Their biohulls writhed with tentacles and sensor organs, while weapon ports opened like hungry mouths along their sides. They moved with the fluid grace of living things, but their size was staggering. The smallest was the size of a battleship, while the largest dwarfed anything in the human fleet. "My God," whispered someone at a nearby station. "How many of them are there?" 63,412, reported the tactical officer with professional precision. "And they're accelerating." Estimated time to weapon range, 11 minutes. Chen activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We've drilled this 100 times. First line, Council energy weapons, target the largest ships. Second line, human missile cruisers, prepare for nuclear barrage. Third line, close combat vessels, hold position until my signal. Remember, these things have been eating civilizations since before humans walked upright. Today they learn what happens when they bite off more than they can chew." The acknowledgments came back in dozens of languages, but the determination was universal. Across the fleet, weapons powered up, shields activated, and crews took their positions at battle stations. "Energy weapons range in 30 seconds, called the tactical officer. Chen watched the display as the first line of Council ships began their attack. Beams of coherent energy lanced out across the void, striking the approaching devourers with enough power to vaporize a mountain. The bio ships shuddered under the assault, their living hulls charred and burned, but they kept coming. "Minimal effect," reported the sensor operator. "Their hulls are adapting to the energy frequencies." "Missile range in 15 seconds, called Tactical. "All missile cruisers, fire at will," Chen ordered. "Target the wounded ones first." The human ships unleashed their nuclear arsenal in a coordinated barrage that lit up space like a newborn star. Thousands of fusion warheads streaked toward the Devourer fleet, each one carrying the destructive power of humanity's deadliest weapons. The results were immediate and devastating. Nuclear fire blossomed against the bio-hulls of the leading Devourers, and for the first time in the battle, the creatures showed signs of real damage. Several of the smaller ships simply vaporized under the assault, while larger ones were left drifting, their hulls burned and torn. "Direct hits across the formation," reported Tactical, excitement creeping into his voice. "We've destroyed or disabled approximately 800 enemy vessels. But even as the human weapons took their toll, the sheer size of the Devourer fleet became apparent. 800 ships destroyed out of over 60,000 was barely a dent in their numbers. And now they were close enough to return fire. The Devourer weapons were unlike anything in the Council databases. Bioplasma cannons erupted from their hulls, firing streams of corrosive energy that ate through ship armor like acid. Tentacle launchers shot out grappling appendages that could tear a frigate in half, while organic missile pods launched what appeared to be small, living creatures that burrowed into enemy hulls and detonated from within. The first casualties came quickly. A crystalline hegemony cruiser was caught by 3 bioplasma streams simultaneously and simply dissolved, its crew never even having time to scream. A human destroyer tried to evade a tentacle attack, but was caught and crushed like an egg in a giant's fist. "They're breaking through the outer perimeter," reported Tactical. "Recommend we begin close combat phase." Chen studied the tactical display. The plan was working, but at a terrible cost. They were trading ships at a ratio that favored the Devourers, and they couldn't sustain that for long. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Close to knife-fighting range. Kinetic weapons, maximum rate of fire. It's time to show these monsters what humans do best." The remaining ships of the combined fleet surged forward, closing the distance to the Devourer swarm with a courage that defied sanity. Human vessels led the charge, their rail guns and mass drivers spitting tungsten penetrators at relativistic speeds. The kinetic rounds punched through the bio-hulls like they were made of paper, sending chunks of alien flesh spinning into space. What followed was the largest space battle in galactic history. Ships fought at ranges measured in kilometers rather than light seconds, with weapons designed for precision being used like clubs in a bar fight. Human Marines boarding pods punched through Devourer hulls and fought hand-to-hand combat inside the creatures' bodies, while alien ships coordinated their fire with human vessels to bring down the largest bioships. Chen watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as her plan unfolded around her. The humans were proving their worth in the most brutal way possible, but the cost was staggering. She had started the battle with over 2,000 human vessels. Now, barely an hour into the fight, she was down to less than 800. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a priority message from Captain Rodriguez on the TDS Vengeance. His ship is heavily damaged and he's requesting permission to attempt a ramming attack on the largest Devourer." Chen closed her eyes for a moment. The Vengeance was a heavy cruiser with a crew of over 400. "Tell Captain Rodriguez. Tell him his request is approved, and tell him it's been an honor to serve with him." On the tactical display, she watched as the Vengeance broke from formation and accelerated toward a massive Devourer bioship that had been carving its way through the Council lines. The human ship's engines burned at maximum power as it closed the distance, its remaining weapons firing continuously. The impact was spectacular. The Vengeance struck the bioship at nearly 10% of light speed, punching completely through its living hull and detonating its fusion reactor inside the creature's body. The resulting explosion tore the Devourer apart and damaged several nearby bioships, but the cost was 400 human lives. "Vengeance destroyed," reported Tactical quietly, "but the ramming attack was successful." Similar scenes played out across the battlefield as both human and Council ships made desperate last stands to take down larger Devourers. The gentle traders, despite their peaceful nature, proved surprisingly effective at suicide attacks, their merchant vessels packed with explosives and guided by crews who refused to abandon their posts. But it was a human innovation that finally turned the tide. Commander Torres had been studying the Devourer bioships throughout the battle, looking for any weakness they could exploit. What she found changed everything. "Admiral," she called out excitedly, "I've been analyzing the bioship internal structure. They're not individual creatures, they're colonies, billions of smaller organisms working together. And I think I know how to disrupt them." "Explain," Chen ordered, dodging debris from a nearby explosion. "The smaller organisms communicate through bioelectrical signals. If we can disrupt those signals, the entire ship becomes nothing but dead tissue. Our electromagnetic pulse warheads should do it." Chen felt a surge of hope. "How many EMP warheads do we have left?" 47 across the fleet. It wasn't many, but it might be enough. "Signal all ships with EMP capability. Target the largest Devourers and coordinate your attacks. Let's see how well these things fight when their nervous systems are scrambled." The EMP attack was devastating in a way that nuclear weapons couldn't match. As the electromagnetic pulses washed over the Devourer bioships, their coordinated movements became erratic spasms. The living hulls went dark as the billions of small organisms that made up their bodies lost the ability to communicate with each other. "It's working," shouted the tactical officer. "The affected ships are losing cohesion. They're falling apart." Across the battlefield, dozens of massive Devourers simply collapsed as their cellular structure broke down. What had been terrifying bioweapons became nothing more than floating clouds of organic debris. But the victory came at a cost that made Chen's heart ache. Of the 14,000 ships that had started the battle, fewer than 3,000 remained. The human fleet was down to just over 200 vessels, and every surviving ship bore the scars of combat. "Admiral," called the sensor operator, her voice thick with emotion. "Long-range sensors show the remaining Devourers are retreating. They're entering hyperspace and heading back toward deep space." Chen slumped in her command chair, suddenly feeling every one of her 53 years. They had won, but the price had been almost everything they had. "Signal all ships," she said quietly. "Well done." Send damage reports and casualty figures to my ready room. And someone get me a list of the ships we lost. I want to remember them all." As the reports came in, the magnitude of their victory became clear. They had destroyed or disabled over 40,000 Devourer bioships, breaking the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. The surviving Devourers, perhaps 20,000 strong, were fleeing back into the void between galaxies, but the cost had been enormous. 12,000 ships destroyed, over 2 million sentients dead, and entire species reduced to single-digit ship counts. The human fleet, which had borne the brunt of the close combat, was virtually destroyed. Later, as Chen stood in her ready room looking out at the debris field that marked the greatest space battle in history, Ambassador Zethkree's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council and every living being in the galaxy, I want to thank you. Your species saved us all." Chen smiled sadly. "We did what we came to do, Ambassador. We answered the call for help." "The galaxy will not forget this," Zethkree promised. "Humanity will always be welcome among the stars. You have proven yourselves to be exactly what we needed, not conquerors or destroyers, but protectors." The cavalry, indeed. As Chen looked out at the stars, she knew that this battle had changed everything. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, and now there would be no going back. They were no longer the unknown Deathworlders hiding in an isolated system. They were the species that had faced down the galaxy's greatest nightmare and emerged victorious. The cavalry had arrived, had fought, and had won. And the galaxy would never be the same.